Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to give you the briefing for lab test 2, the overview of what the lab test is all about, and also I'm going to give you some pointers and guidance on how can you approach completing the lab test 2 successfully. Okay, as the name suggests, this lab is called a black box experiment. So what it means is literally you are given a box, okay, a black box, which contains a circuit inside. So you have an electrical circuit inside with some components, and the components can consist anything from resistors, capacitors, inductors, and also diode. Okay, and then you have wires coming out of the black box. Okay, you have two wires on either side. So that means you have one side to be input and the other side to be output. But we don't know, you don't know which side is input or output, and also we don't know what's the circuit inside, and you cannot open the circuit inside. So the objective of the test is actually for you to devise an experiment, do the experiment, and try to deduce what sort of circuit is inside. So you can come up with the actual schematic diagram of the circuit, or at least the equivalent circuit of the actual circuit that give the correct function as how you have measured it. Okay, now, so I'm gonna show you what's inside the box, okay, just to give you a rough idea. So you're not supposed to open the box, but inside there will be a circuit. So let's look at the circuit inside, right? So in this particular box, there's a circuit that looks something like this. So as you can see, it's not very straightforward. So this one is a bit complicated. There's 4 resistors, there's 2 capacitors, and 2 inductors. All right, so it's not very straightforward and a bit challenging for you. So there will be many different circuits inside the box. So you'll be given a random box. You don't know what's inside, and I don't know what's inside, but there's a serial number on the box that you need to write down on your answer sheet. Okay, so I'm just going to give you another kind of circuit here. So if we look at another kind of circuit here, so there's another kind of circuit here, so that I put in, which is much simpler. So the point I'm trying to make is that the circuit can be quite simple, but it functions as an actual circuit, and it can have a function. That means it might be functioning as a rectifier or a filter, you know. So it's consists of the circuits that you have covered in this first year lab. Okay, and then you have the 4 wires. So a pair or 2 wires on each side, and each wire is colored differently. So what you need to do is to devise an experiment on how to do measurement. You can use all the equipment on the bench top, like for example your multimeter, your function generator, and oscilloscope. Do measurements and try to figure out what is the circuit inside the inside the black box. Okay, so right now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you some presentation and a more in-depth detail about how can you approach this lab 2 and strategize, because if you don't prepare in advance, then you will have not enough time. In terms of the test itself, so you will be doing it on the same day as your lab session, but you will be doing it individually. For each day, there will be two separate sessions, because you will be given 1 hour and 30 minutes. So for the first session, 1 hour and 30 minutes, one group, and then the other 1 hour and 30 minutes, the other group. So I'm gonna post the timetable according to the name and the number of students on You Can Follow. So you can check the schedule for if your lab session is on Monday, you can check whether you are the first session or the second session on Monday, and so on. Okay, so let's go to the presentation now. Okay, so now this is the representation of our circuit with our black box in the middle, and we have 4 wires, 2 on each side. We don't know which side is input or output. That is something that we need to determine. And at the same time, we need to determine for each side which one is the signal and which one is the ground wire. So in reality, this can be here and this can be here. So we really don't know. And the same thing for the wire as well. So we don't know which color is the ground, which color is the signal. So we have maybe 3 objectives here. So the first objective is to know which side is the output and input, and then which wire is the signal wire and which one is the ground wire. And we do that by doing experiment, doing measurement, and at the same time, that can give us some information about the actual circuit inside the black box. So the way we measured, based on our measurement, we can anticipate or we can observe the behavior of the circuit. So by knowing the behavior of the circuit, we can guess or deduce what is the function of the circuit, and then systematically with the data that we get from the measurement, we can in fact determine the actual circuit. So the challenge for you here is, how do you start to strategize and go about in doing the experiment? So here I'm going to give you some pointers. Okay, so this is a guide, like a hint for you. So how to determine the procedure steps. So the first thing that is most basic for you to do is to test connectivity by measuring resistance. You use a multimeter and you measure the resistance between two wires, and you have to consider all pairs. Okay, what do I mean by that? So you take a multimeter, put it in ohm meter setting. So you want to measure the resistance. So you measure the resistance between the wire, the red and black wire, and then red with brown wire, and then red with blue wire. You keep repeating again between black and brown, black and blue, and then brown and blue. So you have the resistance reading between each pair of possible wires. Okay. And since you have 4 wires, then that means you should have 6 pairs. Okay, so you can put the results in a table, and that should give you an idea which side is input and output, but not entirely. So maybe you have some idea, but not really exactly. Okay. And another thing about this, right? So with the resistance reading, you can actually guess. One of the things that you can get is actually to determine which wires are the ground. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. So if you have a circuit, right, if you examine all the circuits that you have learned in this lab, that between the input and output, the ground should be on the same node, right? So it should have the same potential. It it should have the same voltage or the same node voltage, which is 0. Ground is 0, right? So if it's 0, if that means it has the same node, that means and both sides needs to have a ground. So therefore the ground for each side is connected to each other. So that means if it's connected to each other, then the resistance should be very, very low, like maybe 1 ohms or even lower. So if you measure, like for example, you measure the resistance between the black and brown wire. Okay, you measure, and then that's the only pair whereby the resistance reading is the lowest, which is 1 ohms or even less. So that can be a very good indicator that these 2 wires are the ground wires, especially when all the other pairs do not give out the resistance reading as low as that. So you can easily say, okay, confirm between black and brown is the ground. Okay. So next is to run a DC and AC analysis. So this is the key part of your experiment. So you need to run a DC and AC analysis. What does it mean? You need to input a DC signal inside the input, and then measure the output, and then do it again for AC signal. Okay, but however, remember, we still not confirm yet which side is the input, which side is the output. Maybe, most probably, we already have figured out which wires are the ground wires. So that is a good start. So once you can guess that, then it narrows down the scope of your experiment moving forward from this. So now let's look at the DC measurement. Okay, so for DC measurement, you might want to think that oh, okay, we can supply a DC voltage and then look at the other end, or look at the other side and measure the voltage. Well, you can do that, but that will not give you too much information. So what can be more beneficial is to instead to supply a DC pulse. So what does a DC pulse, or sometimes it's called step pulse. So if you look at your function generator, you can supply AC signal and DC signal. For AC signal, you can supply like sine wave or square wave or triangular wave. For DC, what you can do, you can choose the signal type to be DC pulse or step pulse. So what this will give, it will give a pulse of a square wave, which is all in the positive voltage, so a positive step voltage, okay, using the function generator, and make sure that it is not more than 2 volts, the amplitude. So you can supply it to one side. So for one side, you just supply it to one wire, and then look at the other side, measure both sides. Okay. Consider both sides as input and output. What do I mean by that? Okay, so what you can do for this DC analysis, you must first supply the signal. So let's say you supply the signal, right? So the function generator. So let's say this is your function generator, and maybe we already established that the red one is the ground, blue one is, and also the ground as well. So we know that then the signal wires are the black going from this side to this side, but we don't know which one is output and input. So what we can do, we can just assume, okay, let's assume this side is input first. Okay, and then from our function generator, we put the signal into the signal wire, and then the ground goes to ground. Okay, and then on the other side, what you have your oscilloscope. So you can have your oscilloscope, OSCL, which is a short for your oscilloscope. And then you have two channels, channel 1 and channel 2. So channel 1, you can connect the probe to the signal, okay, that you input from the function generator, and the second one is the output. So since you already assume that this one is the signal, so you can measure here, but you don't know yet. So you can do one time and then measure like this and observe. And then what you can do is to repeat the same thing, but maybe try to consider this one to be the signal as well. So you compare between these two measurements. It might not make much sense. So, but you can repeat. So, and then you can repeat for the other side. So you disconnect everything. Okay, now let's assume this one is the input and this one is the output, and you repeat the same process again. You just connect the function generator to the signal wire, and then the ground goes to ground, and then function generator first probe goes here, second probe goes here. Okay, and then do one time and then repeat again for the other wire as well, and then see what's going on. So you may observe something. So, and then you compare all the measurements that, and then you can see which one make much more sense, and then just record your reading. Okay, so this one gives you a more indication on which side is input or output, but maybe not entirely. Okay, that's why we need to do another kind of measurement, which is the AC measurement, because the circuit that is inside does not only contain resistor, it must also contain either capacitor or diode or inductor, or all the combination. Okay, so we really don't know. So that's why we need to do the AC analysis. So for AC analysis, just supply AC signal. Maybe the easiest for you to supply is sine wave, and then make sure it's not more than 2 volts peak to peak. And then what you do, you sweep the frequency of the signal from like maybe very low, like 100 hertz, all the way to maybe 100 kilohertz or even more if you want, and then measure the voltage of input and output both, and then you switch and then repeat again. So basically you repeat the same thing as how you did for the DC. Okay, connect the function generator, connect the oscilloscope, observe what's happening, and then just switch and then try all wires, and then you get some indication of what the circuit is all about. So hopefully, if you have done everything correctly from the measurement of the resistance, the DC, and also AC analysis, you already can know which side is the input, which side is the output, and also which wire is the ground, which wire is the signal wire. Okay, so yeah, so you should be able to identify which wire pair is the input and output. On each side, which wire is the signal wire, which one is the ground, and then you can state the relationship between the input and an output, and identify what is the name or function of the circuit. So is it a filter, or if it's a filter, is it a high pass, low pass, band pass,
Is it a half-wave rectifier, full-wave rectifier? So all the kind of circuits that you have come across in the first year lab can be the circuit inside. Okay, so all those circuits are inside the box, but there are many boxes, right? There's 40 boxes. So when you take one, you could have taken like a simple circuit or quite a complicated circuit. So it's really up to you. Okay, so it's up on your, not really your luck, but if you ask me, all the circuits are equally challenging. Yeah. All right. So, and number 4, optional, if you want, you can also do two-port network analysis and get the equivalent circuit, which is also good. At least you can know whether it fits your description of the circuit, and make your claim even more strong in terms of identifying what is the circuit inside the black box. All right, so just make sure that you present your result properly. For every step that produce result, present the result properly. So something that I can look at and understand easily, so that I can give you easily the marks that you deserve. Okay, and then basically the question will have 4 questions. Okay, so there will be 4 questions, but the way you answer those questions are like as if you are writing a lab report, whereby you have to state what is your objective, what is your procedure, and then present your result, do some discussion, discuss your result, and then come to a conclusion. And your conclusion should be what is the circuit inside the black box and what does it look like.
So I hope that is clear. I think it should be very, very helpful. I've never done this before, so I think I've given you more than enough information. In fact, too much information. Okay, too much information. TMI, too much information. So yes, so please prepare yourself properly, and I wish you all the best. So you should have no excuse on not being able to answer the lab test 2 properly. Okay, so I wish you all the best. See you during the test. Bye bye.